Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week, we kicked off the Desert Double with a much needed Rublev title in Qatar, then saw Baez defend his title in Rio. And this week, we'll be breaking down this week's action in Dubai, Acapulco, and Santiago. All right, Aidan, what came as a bigger shock to you this week? Was it Zverev coming up empty the last few weeks and kind of relatively weaker draws, or Tsitsipas winning a title in Dubai?
I think I would say the bigger shock was Tsitsipas winning because he really had not shown very much that he was at that level over these past few months. And then he comes up here and just makes a massive step up and gets it done. I mean, he didn't have to play some of the top guys, but he still was able to defeat the people that he was presented with. So obviously, props to him for doing that. And especially after Zverev played pretty terrible in Argentina and Brazil, I was not that surprised that he came up empty in Mexico as well. So I do have to say, though, if you were looking at it from before the tournament started, I think I would say I was more shocked that Zverev didn't win a title because he came off pretty hot after that great Australian Open run. And I would have expected him in these weaker draws, like you were saying, to be able to get at least one title.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of my biggest point there too, the hot Australian Open run. But then you had alluded to this point last week too. Like while these draws may be weaker relatively, they're still clay rats, right? They're clay guys, so still a little tough for him, being the best ranked player there, but having to play against lower ranked guys who are still good on clay.
100%. I mean, look at Baez. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but he is one of the best players in the world on clay. I mean, you see his results when he's playing on clay, and then you look at him the rest of the year, and you're like, this guy does not really. It feels as though he doesn't deserve the ranking, but he does
hmm
because of how good he is on clay.
Yeah. So Tsitsipas, that's a good segue into Dubai. So let's just start off with him winning this title. I mean, you saw the tennis TV stat because you sent it to me. I thought it was pretty funny that they posted this thing about most ATP 500 finals. I didn't know if they meant it to be kind of as like a hurrah, but I thought they did him dirty because his stats were 0 and 11 in his past ATP 500 finals.
I think it was just kind of like a talking point. Like it's
Yeah.
something to think about that of the people that have made 12 ATP finals, he was the only one that's never won one. Most of them had won like five or six at least. So pretty wild to see that he had made that many and never won one. But yeah, I mean, he finally gets it done here.
Yeah, he did. And he posted that funny video on Instagram too, like singing for Paula Badosa, his girlfriend. Just you could tell super excited. And coincidentally, he did it with a new racket. So I think the other biggest news, other than him winning this title, was he had a mystery racket, right? It was all blacked out, but it had a Wilson stencil on the strings. Strange dynamic here because a lot of people are hypothesizing that it's a Babolat racket just kind of by the way it was structured. There's got to be some kind of like contractual obligation with Wilson, though, right? Because I don't think you can just try out other rackets, but this was strange.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I guess you put the Wilson on there so that they still see you're playing with a Wilson racket hypothetically, but anyone could tell that wasn't necessarily a classic racket that you would have seen him with normally. So, like you said, very strange situation there.
Yeah, I respect it though because he's been in a rut, right? There's no denying that he hasn't been playing well the last couple of years, and he's actually doing something about it. He's acknowledging, he's been quoted saying that the balls and the surfaces have become slower on the tour, so he's trying to be proactive and do something about it. And I think someone like Medvedev should also think about it, whether it's changing up a play style or even trying out a new racket. I think this is a good example of the next gen guy or a next gen guy who has been struggling trying to make changes to adapt to this new era in tennis.
Yeah, and I think part of that is when you change your racket, maybe with that comes a little bit of a different playing style. Like it can probably be difficult to completely change how you play with the same racket because it maybe suits a certain style of play better. And so if you are able to force yourself to change rackets, then maybe that forces you to change how you play.
100%. And it's kind of a known thing. I was doing a lot of research on this too, that Babolat rackets are known for power, something that Tsitsipas has kind of lacked on that backhand side, especially. And Wilson is more, the blade is more so for control. You're not going to have as many miss hits, but you may not be able to generate as much power. And in today's game, it's all about power. Like you see Alcaraz and his Babolat. So I feel like Tsitsipas needed to do something, and that Babolat racket just kind of suits him a little better. It's got, I think, a heavier frame, so you get a little more power there and better topspin too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a racket expert, but
Yeah, no, me neither. Me neither. Just, a couple of YouTube videos and some research. But what I find funny here is Wilson, obviously people are reaching out and they have not returned any requests for comments. So keeping it in the dark there.
yeah, I mean, if he is playing with a different racket, I wonder if that means like he's on the way out from being sponsored by them. You'd think, right?
Definitely, definitely. But in other news, we got FAA. I think he's back on track here. I mean, he's been in three finals and two titles so far in 2025. He semied last week in Qatar. He's number 18 in the live rankings. Like, what are your thoughts on FAA right now?
I mean, I think, like you said, he has been playing excellent in 2025 so far. An interesting thing that stuck out to me is that in the year to date rankings, with just points achieved in 2025, he's actually number 3 and is ahead of Alcaraz. So that's a guy that is considered one of the best players in the world, if not the best peak level player, Alcaraz. And the fact that FAA is above him right now shows that through this point in the year, he has been maybe one of the consistently best players out there. Another guy that stands out to me is actually the other Canadian, Shapovalov, who's number 9 in the year-to-date rankings. So these are guys that haven't really been playing at a peak level for the last couple of years, but so far in 2025 have been real contenders, real threats in tournaments.
Yeah, nice to see it because we mention all the time how explosive Shapovalov is too, like how fun and exciting his game is. So when he's on and we can see more of him, he'll make it deeper runs in tournaments. We get to watch him. And then coincidentally, FAA uses a Babolat, the pure arrow. So
Yeah.
we're seeing him hit the ball well too.
100%. I mean, I think these rankings don't mean that much, obviously, because you see some guys in the rankings, you're like, that guy is not going to stay there
Mhm.
for very long. But
Yeah.
it's still cool to be like, okay, so far this year, they're playing very well.
Yeah, it is very early in the season, but contrastingly, Medvedev just continues to struggle. He exited in the quarterfinals, losing to Greekspor. He actually could have closed it out too in the second set, had a couple match points, didn't, and then smashed his racket, received a code violation, and actually verbally abused the ref too. This one was pretty pretty absurd to see because he accused him of being soft. He accused him of having a thing against Russians, that he had a double standard against Russians. And this one caught my attention, so I did a little bit of digging and I found that apparently this ref had a problem with Hachinov a couple years ago too. So that's where the angst against Russians come from. But it's not unlike Medvedev to do this, but he doesn't even shake his hand after the match, which I think is extremely disrespectful.
Yeah, I think you see that just when they get into the ref, they don't want to just be yelling at a guy and then still shake their hand. But yeah, I mean, I think Medvedev, like I said in the past, the more he struggles to succeed, the more outbursts we're seeing from him. Then again, this match, I do want to give credit to Greekspor. Like he played excellent. And I think with Medvedev, he just got exploited on key points. Like in that second set, this is actually my match of the week. So
Hmm.
I'll get into it a little bit here, but Greekspor hit 2 back-to-back serve followed by drop shot points when it was match point against him. And it was because when Medvedev's back there returning the serve, he's so far back. And you look at how this strategy works against him, it works so successfully. And even when Medvedev gets to the net, it feels like he's not the most comfortable guy up there. So we've said this how many times in the past? I feel like a broken record talking about this a little bit. You got to change something, Medvedev. And even though you were this close to winning this match, it feels like you're not willing to take any chances to push it over the edge. And sometimes you have to.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Definitely credit to Greek Sport. I was pretty surprised that Medvedev did, he had a couple nice wins. He beat Struff and then he beat GMP, which I thought he was going to lose. I thought
Yeah.
he would have real problems against GMP.
Yeah. I mean, I think with some guys, his style just works a little bit better. And
Hmm.
maybe with those guys, it was able to. But I think that partially has to do with the ability to actually adjust how you play to Medvedev. Like I think Greek Sport was able to adapt his own style of play to deal with Medvedev playing so deep in these ground stroke uh, baseline situations. Whereas maybe Struff and GMP were a little bit too dependent on their serve being really strong. But like I said with Greek Sport, he was playing great this tournament overall. I mean, he beat Humbert the round before, so it could also be less on Medvedev and more that Greek Sport is just playing well.
Yeah, and that was funny. You were like, "Oh, I didn't know he's from New York. He's from Harlem and
Yeah,
New
exactly.
Amsterdam."
Yeah,
Hilarious.
same name all over the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just repurpose it. But then Medvedev's countryman Rublev, we saw him lose first round coming off his title last week. This one was a tough loss to Hallis because it was a third set tiebreaker that he lost 7-5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this begs the question, was last week a fluke?
I mean, I just feel like it's been a very weird year in terms of the consistency rather for a lot of these players. I mean, how many guys have we seen play very well and then play poorly right after? Look at who we were talking about earlier, Zverev played excellent at the Australian Open and then had a very disappointing few weeks after that. Alcaraz wins a tournament, next week loses in like the second round. It's just a lot of guys have had a ton of variance in their play style. I was actually looking at this uh, last week, and I wanted to know when the last time Sinner had lost to an unseeded opponent in a tournament. It
Hmm.
hasn't happened since August of 2023.
Whoa.
Yeah, he lost, I think, the first round in Cincinnati to uh, Dusan Lajovic.
Hmm.
But since then, he's only lost to guys that were seeded in the tournament, like at least in like the top 15.
Yeah, and other than him, it was Djokovic, right? Who is kind of, I'm sure, with a similar stat, but Zverev, Alcaraz, like the next few guys, Zverev, Alcaraz, Medvedev, those guys just aren't as consistent.
Yeah, they might lose to anybody. They'll
Hmm.
probably they can
It's a toss
compete
up.
with anybody, but they also might lose to anybody.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's head over to Mexico, Acapulco. We had Mahach. He won his first ATP title, popped his cherry there. He cracks the top 20. And this was a guy who was on our radar for who was potentially going to break out in 2025. So I felt like this title was kind of inevitable, right? Like it was only a matter of time until he was going to get it. And in this match, in the final, his serve was absolutely on point. He served 95% first serve with 11 aces and only faced one break point, which he saved. But you know what was not on point? I'm not digging the short shorts, man. His shorts are giving me like 1970s Bjorn Borg vibes. It is just uncomfortable.
It's
Like you
it's
think his
crazy.
junk just might fall out or something.
I mean, he's in that competition with Runa. I'm sure. Just
Oh, I
just
think he
they're making
wins.
it shorter and shorter and shorter. One of them is going to eventually have to give up.
I agree. Yeah. Remember when Medvedev was mocking Runa by pulling his shorts all the way up when he was returning?
Yeah, exactly. They still weren't as short as
Yeah.
Mahach's.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Unfortunately, Davidovich Fokina, the finalist, he suffers another heartbreaking finals loss. He's still chasing that elusive title. He's doing well though this year.
Yeah, second finals already this year. But one thing that was actually surprising to me though was that this is actually his third final. Only his third. I think when we saw that a couple of years ago he made that Masters 1000 final in Cincinnati, you kind of assume that he's made other finals somewhere along the way. But this is actually only his third, and so I think he has time. I think he's going to get one eventually, and I think he has to almost take it as a positive step, just that he's making more and more finals.
You know what it is, right?
What's that?
He got rid of the man bun.
Of course.
I'm telling you. So I was watching him play these last couple weeks. I'm like, something looks different about him. And then it hit me most recently. He doesn't have a man bun anymore. And I like him so much better now. Like that man bun was such a ridiculous look. It reminded me of, millennials in 2014 who were like listening to Mumford and Sons and drinking IPAs. Like, dude, that's just not in style anymore. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
There
all in the
was
hairstyle. That's what was
that's what it
holding him
was. Yeah.
back.
I'm like, this guy just he looks like he's playing better. I don't know. But we had a food poisoning debacle in Acapulco. This was interesting because Rude had to pull out due to stomach illness. Runa played just 3 games before he had to retire. And then Tommy Paul also pulled out of his match against Garone. And it sucks because these guys were top seeds too. So, like this tournament, I felt just kind of didn't have that it factor because after those guys went out because of food poisoning, the next top seeds, Zverev, Shelton, Tiafo, all out in the second round. So we're just like not seeing that star-studded draw anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's goes back to that thing we've talked about in the past where like you want to balance somewhere. You want there to be the potential for some early upsets, but you also want some of the top guys to make it to later rounds so you can see more of those monumental matchups where you're looking at two guys maybe in the top 20 playing each other or two guys in the top 10 playing each other. When all of them are out early, you're kind of like, okay, well, now we're seeing matchups that we could have seen in a challenger last week. But another thing about these guys going out is you look at someone like Tiafo this year. He has yet to make it past round two in any tournament so far. Granted, it's very early in the year, and we know that he's not probably going to succeed until August when the U.S. Open
Yeah.
happens. But it's just a bummer to see that he can't figure out the consistency.
No, I agree. So what is that like Montezuma's Revenge? That's what it's called. Don't drink the water in Mexico.
I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know
you don't
that
know?
one.
You've never heard that? Yeah.
No, I know don't drink the water, but
Yeah, Montezuma's Revenge. I'm actually going to Mexico here pretty soon, so I will not be drinking the water.
yeah, bottled water.
Bottled water. And then what I think was one of the most exciting headlines this week was Lerner Tien upsetting Zverev because he continues to impress. He took out Medvedev in Australia. Now Zverev here, so this will be the biggest win of his career. And I found it funny that he had to qualify for this event because I kind of think of him already as a top player, but I forget that he's, not there ranking
19 years
wise.
old.
Yeah, he's only 19. I'm about ready to start counting his titles, but I have to be brought down to earth. Remember that he's still qualifying, but
100%.
yeah, we looked it up, right, for Indian Wells. Luckily, he has a wild card.
Yeah, him and Fonseca kind of in a similar situation where you,
Hmm.
you look at them, you're like, these guys are like already there pretty much, but there's still a little bit of a learning curve for them. But wins like this just boost his status so much.
Yeah, totally. But Zverev, he just played way too passive. He couldn't control points from the baseline, and he made 18 unforced errors. So, you can't win a match like that.
Yeah, but I think that worked in combination with the fact that Tien was playing very strategic tennis. He didn't try to blast it past Zverev like a lot of the other top guys do. I mean, like you
Hmm.
were saying with the switching to the Babolat racket, a lot of these guys just absolutely pound the ball. Look at how Alcaraz plays. Not to say Alcaraz isn't strategic, but
Hmm.
having the strength of forehand that he does also helps
Yeah.
him. But Tien wasn't hitting it through Zverev. He was moving him around, looking for openings, and then seizing them when he saw it.
Yeah. And Zverev, just, back to him playing too passive. There was, I think, a few points where Tien had hit the net cord. So Zverev gets a short ball running in and just hits a lackluster approach shot, gets past. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be winning he lost all those points too.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing is you look at these top guys and you're like, if you get an approach shot, that point should be yours.
Yes.
But for some of the guys, it just isn't. They just don't, they'd much rather sit at the baseline than come
Hmm.
into the net and try to finish the point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, last but certainly not least, maybe least, I don't know, maybe that's why I saved it for last,
Last
but
but maybe least.
last but maybe least, Santiago, Chile. Biggest headline here was Baez was going for the back-to-back title defenses. So he had won Rio the week before, and he was or in the final here in Santiago same scenario last year, won Rio and then won Santiago. But
Exactly. Yeah, it kind of
yeah,
reminds me of FAA in 2023, 2024 when he went on that indoor swing at the end of 2023, won three indoor tournaments late in the season, and then the next year was able to back one up. Kind of a similar situation for Baez here, where he won these two clay tourneys last year, made it to the final in both again, but was only able to convert one.
yeah, Baez will be exciting to see in the French Open. I'm
Yeah,
kind of already like, I got high hopes for him after these last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we I think sometimes underrate these guys. I mean, think of I spoke about this recently, but remember how Cerundolo did in the French Open last year? Could have been like a quarterfinalist if he hadn't lost that close match to Djokovic. So these guys on the clay courts are legitimate threats, and if they can adjust to maybe that five set format a little better, they could be real threats to actually win the whole tournament.
Yeah, I mean, most potential in the French Open. It's like the most likely of a slam for a unlikely player to win, just because you have those like lower ranked guys, but they're great on clay.
100%, 100%.
Yeah, but Jair was the winner. We don't want to take away from him. Credit to him here. I didn't realize that he won three titles.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. But he's one of those guys where he is Serbian, and I feel like you don't see as many clay rats from that area in Europe. I feel like they're more just general hardcore players, but he's won three titles all on clay, so he may be another clay rat.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because Belgrade actually the tournament used to be on clay, but recently switched to hard.
Okay,
I think last year was the
so maybe
first year on
historically
hard.
they've been more of a clay court nation.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. It's just hard because Djokovic is, all surface
Yeah,
guy.
exactly. You can't get a specific sort of focus for what Djokovic is good on.
Right. But all in all, pretty lackluster draw here in Santiago. Santiago. The top seeds were Cerundolo, Tabilo, Baez, and Martinez. And I expected a lot more out of Jerry here. I was kind of, like I said, he used to be one of my favorite players and he won this tournament back in 2023. So I was thinking, all right, here we go. Maybe this, at least we can see a run from Jerry, but no, loses first round. And this one was a heartbreaker too to Ugo. And it was a third set tiebreaker, 11-9. He lost.
Yeah, that's always a tough one when it gets that close to the end. Means both guys really had chances to take it for sure.
Yeah, it's tough to go out that way in your home tournament too. Kind of letting the fans down.
Yeah, 100%. But anyway, you ready to hop into segments here?
Yep, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Alrighty, what's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
Oh, I saw something super interesting, Aidan. I know you're gonna like this one. So,
Statistics?
yeah, sure. Sure, let's put it that way. But Berrettini wins the first annual Nothing Major Hottie bracket. He is officially the hottest guy on the ATP Tour. He won 64% of the vote. Tommy Paul came in second. And I wanted to ask you, do you know who the quarterfinalists were, or if you had to guess?
The quarterfinalists? So that's
The other
eight?
two guys, the other two
Oh, the
guys. So
semifinal, the other semifinalists.
sure, yeah, 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 the other semifinalists.
I mean, I gotta go with my boy Dimitrov, had to be in
Yeah,
there.
yep.
uh and then I have no idea who
The
the
other
other
one
one would be.
surprised me. It was actually fellow Norwegian Casper Ruud.
Ah, Casper Root.
Yeah, Ruud.
Underrated, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
This is an
Um,
annual event. I mean, how many new guys are there going to be on the
I
tour
know,
next year?
right?
Does
I know.
Berrettini just sweep every year?
Well, first year doing it, it was kind of funny because I listened to them pretty religiously, and they brought it up, and they've been like polling every week for the last few weeks on like they did an actual draw on this thing. So I
It
think they're going to
wasn't their
continue it.
votes; it was the fan vote.
The fans, yeah, the fans voted. But actually, in more serious news, I saw that Indian Wells just announced that they are changing their surface provider to Lakehold, which is the same surface provider as Miami and US Open. So I thought that was pretty interesting, kind of making the courts more consistent. And there is someone came out and said that, when courts are more consistent, it comes down to the tennis player, right? It's not
Yeah.
just about like the court dependency.
Well, I mean, also didn't guys like have a lot of complaints about Indian Wells last year?
Yeah, I think it was too slow. Like it
Or at
was
least Medvedev did, right?
yeah, they said it was like sandpaper out there.
Yeah. So not what you don't want to have a lot of complaints, and I feel like a lot of people don't really complain about the U.S. Open surface. So
hmm No, no, I mean it's the US Open, but super excited to see Indian Wells.
hundred
How about
percent.
you? What did you see this week?
I saw actually that Alcaraz is looking to become the third man to three-peat at Indian Wells. The other two were Federer from 2004 to 2006, and then Djokovic from 2014 to 16. So it would have been better if it was switched one year. Then it would have been like every 10 years you get a chance for this. But yeah, it looks like he's just getting another opportunity to kind of cement himself in the history books even more. Not that he already hasn't, but I think just another accomplishment, putting himself with a couple of guys that are obviously legends of the sport, and being in the same conversation as them is always a good thing. But I from this, I did have a question for you. Where do you think that Alcaraz ranks all time at this point?
Ooh, it's a great question. I would put him at like top 12.
Top 12. Okay.
Yeah, I still think he's a little, it's premature.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
do think,
I think
go ahead.
because I think that even that might be a little. I'd
You think
probably
that?
say top 25, but then again, top 25 might be a little too. May not be generous enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was, because you got to think of guys who are like, for example, Del Potro. Like he's not quite there yet, but he has more slams than Del Potro
I mean, if
by
you
a
look at
long shot.
accomplishments, right, you got to say that Alcaraz is above Del Potro. But if you go based on maybe
Legacy
just
though,
pure
right?
ability and maybe peak level, you might still say that Del Potro is higher. I think that's much more contentious, though. I think Alcaraz is a very high peak level. I just don't know whether I would put even Del Potro that high.
Yeah. Oh, I got a question for you. He's got to eclipse Murray, you think, right? Like
Uh,
in his career, like right now, where would you put him relative to Murray?
Definitely below Murray by a pretty significant amount. I mean,
Okay.
Murray two gold medals and
Oh,
three
dude, gold
three
medals
slams
don't mean
and
shit.
11 slam finals. I think
Yes.
you got to say that. I mean, realistically, Alcaraz has won four slams on four appearances,
Yes. Yeah.
or at least in finals. That is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I just think that Murray has more titles total, and I think inarguably had stronger competition since he was always going against the big three. So
hmm
I'd still put Murray significantly ahead there.
Yeah, definitely. I would put him significantly ahead right now, but like right now, Alcaraz, it's so tough because he's accomplished so much. Like he
He's
has
still so
accomplished
young.
exactly. So it's hard to kind of compare him to these guys who accomplished all these things in the span of their career, whereas he's essentially kind of just getting started. Like
Yeah,
someone I
exactly.
would compare him to right now, as far as like equal accomplishments, is maybe Wawrinka.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say yeah, probably very similar in terms of yeah, but I'd say that he has much more potential for space to rise. I think the only argument in Wawrinka's favor is difficulty of competition.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say if Sinner was actually allowed to play Indian Wells, I think he would win. I don't think Alcaraz is getting a three-peat.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sinner probably would put himself in a good position to win, but I think if they matched up, you never know what Alcaraz can pull out.
Yeah, you never know. He may lose first round, he may win the title. Who knows?
Exactly, exactly. But either way, for bet of the week, didn't really have one this week because they're still doing qualifying for Indian Wells. The bracket hasn't really emerged yet, so not any great bets there. But how about match of the week? What'd you go for in this one?
So match of the week, I went with Davidovich Fokina edging past Shapovalov in the semis. This was a two-setter, but it was a tight two-setter. It was two tie breaks, so he won 7-6, 7-6. And Shapovalov was up 4-1 with a break point to go up 5-1 in the first set. But Fokina ended up coming back and winning that set. Then Fokina went up 4-1 in the second set, but Shapovalov ended up coming back there and forced it to a tiebreaker. Couldn't get it done, but still just a super fun and exciting match to watch. And this was one where I found myself going back and forth with who I was rooting for because I felt like I was always rooting for the underdog to come back. And I like Shapovalov better as a player, but I found myself rooting for Davidovich Fokina at the end. So it was pretty fun. You know, one of those where just I wanted to see great tennis, and I loved seeing the handshake at the end because it was a big embrace, and you could just tell that it was such a hard fought battle that both of the players just came up to the net, like hugged each other, and just they left it all out there, and they respected one another for doing that. And I gotta say I love the intensity that Davidovich Fokina plays with too. Like he's laser focused, he celebrates, he just like gets after it. So he's starting to grow on me, and I regret saying that I didn't like him because of his look.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I just got to say, I think they both play a pretty exciting game. And
mhm.
I'll be honest, when I'm watching a match like that and I don't really have a preference of the guys, I kind of root for the guy that is winning because I always feel worse if a guy chokes than if a
Oh,
guy then I feel good about someone making a great comeback. Now that's obviously impacted if like I remember watching Federer play and being like, oh, he's down 2 sets. I want the other guy to choke. But that's when you actually have a preference. In these matches, I'm always like, no, you were up 4-1. Don't choke this.
yeah.
But,
Oh my God, that reminded me of that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like, "No, don't turn 25." Have you seen that?
I have seen
Oh,
that
it's
one.
so good. All right, what about you? What was your match of the week?
Yeah, I kind of already talked about it a little bit. It was Greek sport defeating Medvedev in that tight 3-setter. I mean, the first set, Medvedev kind of just played lights out and won that set pretty easily. And then in the second set, he had so many chances. I mean, he went up a break, then immediately got broken back, still ended up having 2 match points at 4-5 in the second and 2 more at 5-6, and just wasn't able to convert. Uh, and then it went on serve in the last set until the last game, which was a super tense one. 7 deuces, 4 match points for Greek sport, 4 chances for Medvedev to close it out and force a tiebreaker. And Medvedev just was unable to win these critical points. And that was obviously the difference maker in the end. I think, like I said earlier, if he took bigger risks on these points, he probably would have won at least one of those 8 critical points that he wasn't able to. And on the other side, maybe he's counting on Greek sport making an error on one of those 8, but realistically, you can't play tennis just hoping that your other person makes a mistake all the time.
Yeah, sometimes I do that when I'm returning serve. I'm like, oh, come on, just let's get a double fault here.
Oh yeah, like they like on a
It's like I
critical
just
point
feel
when they
like,
miss the
yeah,
first serve and you're like, come on,
yeah,
a double fault would be
yeah.
so nice for me right here.
Yeah, exactly. But I wonder in this match, I wonder if Griekspoor pretty much knew, like after that first set or second set when Medvedev choked it, he's like, all right, I got this. Like after seeing him completely implode, smash his racket, verbally abuse the ref, he's probably feeling pretty good about it. He's like, all right, Medvedev's not in the right headspace right now.
Yeah, that's why they like someone like Federer. He always showed no emotion or as little as he could,
Hmm.
because even if he was feeling like Medvedev obviously was here, it only encourages your opponent when you see that.
Hmm. It's a dead giveaway.
Exactly.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.